Good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to Kaizen Central. Delighted to see so many people already with us. The topic today is inclusion as part of a report that Make UK produced, which I found both fascinating and perhaps disturbing by equal measure. Before I go into that a little bit more, we'll give it just a couple of minutes for others to join and a bit of housekeeping. As I haven't had to do this being on the receiving end of, being on the audience end, if you like, I don't know how to raise the hand, but if you want to ask a question or get involved, and I do want you to, this is your meeting, not mine, please use the raise the hand thing. Because that will allow me to see who wants to ask questions. You automatically go to the front of the top left of my screen, and that will make a huge difference. To otherwise, if people are just waving at me, I don't always see it. Lovely to see some new faces with us today. I know this is a topic that absolutely does resonate for reasons that are they're obviously very sorry, pardon me, I'm letting people in as I'm trying to chat. I can't chew gum and walk at the same time. It's one of my hang-ups. It resonates because obviously it's deeply personal. Diversity and inclusion is about people, and it's very personal. And the way business has been run traditionally for many, many, many years, neither diversity nor inclusion has been taken much into account. And as we'll see from some of the figures I'll show you in a tick, that goes without saying that no amount of wishing it would change is going to make it so yet. There's a huge amount of work to do. I repeat, this is your meeting, and I would very much hope that you will all, pardon me, want to chip in and make a contribution or ask questions of each other. I'm delighted to be joined by Laura McBrown, who'll be describing some of her experiences to us in a minute. But I'm going to share my screen once more and hope that I get it right. Okay. Right, this is the report. So I'm also having to manage the meeting room at the same time. So hold on one second. There it is. Thank you. Okay, this is the report produced by Make UK, and it's a pretty fierce summation of what's going on. What does the average manufacturing workforce look like? Inevitably, rather like the makeup of the Kaizen Central most Thursdays, it's predominantly male. I would have picked up on that spelling mistake, but there we go. Everybody's a sub-editor when nobody least needs them. And 18% of the workforce by ethnicity is BAME. Now, that almost reflects the national population of 20%. But even though, I mean, the 29% female makeup is obviously way out of kilter with national population. But the bit that really sort of grates, if you like, is for women, the vast majority of the roles they fill are administrative and clerical. And when it comes to the high tech, technically qualified, you know, the drop off in percentages is precipitous. And we go down. It's the same, not quite the same, but the picture is quite similar for ethnic minority groups. And again, I think it's obvious that there's a ceiling, glass or otherwise, which means that the top, the most skilled and the most influential parts of manufacturing companies in the UK do not look like the country that we operate in. That wasn't. Sorry, I'm just going down to find a couple more stats. Couldn't find it. Okay, let me go back to the screen. Some of the issues I'd like to address this evening is what will make manufacturers change. I've extracted some stats which we can look at in a minute, and also talk about the supply chain and the market, and of course, most fundamentally, about recruiting young people. Alison put up a slide the other day, that Marian Wright Edelman quote, "You can't be what you can't see." And I think that the pressure on manufacturers and all businesses actually, from a generation that has very different ideas, even from what was happening 20 years ago, the pressure is going to be quite significant. At this point, I'd like to introduce Laura. Laura is Managing Director of G&B Electronics. She'll tell you what they do. Laura, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll be a very regular attendee of Kaizen Central. But tell us something about the company, but most importantly, I want to hear about the gender makeup of your workforce.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for inviting me this evening. Yeah, so as a business, we're a contract manufacturer. We are involved in printed circuit board assembly and electronic product production. So that's a lot in the aerospace sector, a lot of medical devices, sort of high-end, highly regulated type industry. Very technical. Circuit board assembly, as many of you will be aware, is not a straightforward process. The balance of the business in terms of our makeup, male to female, is 50-50, and our leadership team is the same. So we're quite fortunate in that way, that's what we've been able to achieve, and we've almost achieved it by accident. My sister and I took over the business from my father about 5 years ago, and we recognised we needed to do things differently. We had an ageing workforce. We had a lot of skill set within the business, but it wasn't sort of diversified throughout the business. And we needed to make sure that we had, a future for the company. So part of what we went about doing was sort of understanding that the team that we had and the skill sets that they had. And what that has helped us to identify was, in fact, a lot of the people that we needed for the future, we already had. And we just needed to get them to see their own potential and what they were capable of. And by far, the ones that weren't recognising their potential were women. And so we did a lot of work with the team to sort of, help to identify their skill sets, what they would like to do, and encourage them to do more and achieve more within the business. So typically in a business of our size and shape, you'd find that the men would typically run all the production pick and place lines, and you'd have a lot of girls in the hand assembly area. But in our business, we have a woman that runs our production lines, the surface mount department. That department is actually 75% women, and our newest member into that team that we're just training up is a young girl called Chloe, and she's just turned 18. So that diversity in the business in terms of the women that we've brought through over the years, what we've also found is that's helped to lower our age group within the business. I can't really tell you why that's happened, and I don't know whether that is because women are more nurturing, typically with other people within the business and take more time to understand the softer side of people's skill sets. It's just an attribute that women tend to show up more, not suggesting that men can't do that, they can. And we've got a younger supervisor, male young guy, and he's brilliant at that. But it just seems that those typical attributes that women tend to possess more have helped us to also lower our age group within the business. So I hope that's, Nick, was useful. Oh.
If I can ask you, Laura, one of the things that intrigued me was the story of how you recruited somebody who initially said no to the job because, well, you tell the story. I found it really interesting.
Okay, so we were looking for an engineer into our engineering team. And we previously interviewed a lady a few months earlier that hadn't been quite right for the role that we were looking at for her then. And when this new role came up within our engineering department, we contacted the agency and said, is this lady still available? And she was, but she hadn't wanted to go for the role because she couldn't tick all of the boxes on the job description. I think that probably many of you may have seen that there is, research and figures around the fact that if women don't feel like they can do all of the elements of the role, they won't go for the job, whereas men don't feel the same. They I don't know what they think. I'm not a man. So in terms of, trying to get her to put herself forward for that role, she wasn't keen to do it. So we sort of politely said, well, why don't you just ask her to come in for a coffee, just something really low key, and we'll just chat to her about the fact that as a department, the department needs to be able to tick all these boxes, but we don't necessarily expect everybody within the department to be able to do everything. And actually, there is a huge value to what she can bring to the party. And she did join us, so and did very well and was a great member of the team. I think now she's gone on to become a production manager elsewhere. So whether we helped or hindered, I'm not sure, but she's pushing her career forward, which is great.
I saw a lot of heads nodding when Laura was talking about women feel they've got to be able to do 100% of the task. Anybody sort of want to hop in there and pick up on that and perhaps offer their own experiences around this? Niraj, good evening to you.
Hi, good evening. That was very interesting, and I could definitely relate to that. I have tried to support my wife on a few occasions with some, job search. Not that she's actively seeking, but I feel that this description, she could do a great job over there. And she reads the JD and say, I can't do this. I can't do this. I said, but rest of the 10 things you can do very well. He says, no, but how can I commit when I am not able to do this? So I can fully understand and relate, Laura, what you said. Definitely. So I think women, if they want to commit to something, they want to be 100% sure, and they give their 100%. While men folk possibly, tend to take few things for granted, or they see that maybe that kind of seriousness or commitment is more in the ladies. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I must say, in answer to what you said, Laura, about what a bloke would do, I think the answer is wing it most of the time. But Alison, thank you. Welcome all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Lovely to hear you. You've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you for always hosting these. These are always really insightful. No, love what you all are doing, Laura. I totally can relate to that. If it's not everything on the list, then I won't say that I can do it. Thankfully, I've always been a say yes now, figure it out later kind of person, which I find that a lot of women in this industry are. I think that this speaks to, I think the need and the interest of manufacturing to organically figure out how to organically attract women and other diverse people to the industry. So it's not just about, okay, parity, we want to get to 50-50, figure out how to do it. It's how do we how do we make manufacturing the place that women actually want to go to? First off, I've found that the way you word job ads at times will have tremendous impact on what type of candidates you even get. Curious to know if anyone else has had that experience, or Laura, if you found there are certain words, or maybe you don't have a list of 50 things you have to be good at on the ad. Maybe it's a paragraph generic things, or I don't know what kind of feedback you have on that.
Yeah, so in terms of sort of job descriptions, yeah, I think the wording is key. You're dead right. It makes a huge difference. And I think also when it comes down to the age groups as well, so trying to, our younger generations are very much more engaged with what the mission of the company is. What's the purpose? What are they joining? What are they contributing to? So I think it's also getting the wording right around that as well, to try and write something that is in keeping with what's going to engage people and what they want to be a part of.
Thank you. Fatou, welcome. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Fatou Sadikale. Sorry, I am in a taxi, so sorry if there is noise behind me. For me, what I wanted to add is that I work for Forge Consulting. I'm senior consultant in operational excellence. And we had this debate, and it's true that the job description, I think, needs to be, if there are women in the companies, they need to be reviewed by women to attract. We found that sometimes it could be like a barrier for young women, in particular for technical role or roles in operation. And I thought it was a good idea for different women in our company to review the job description. And to try to see if there were like some wording or the way it was presented that could help other female candidates to relate.
Thank you. Thank you. I was chatting with Laura earlier today, and one of the points she was making was about the supply chain. And I'd like to read you just a bit out of the report. It says in the UK, 80% of purchasing decisions are made by women. By 2025, women are expected to own 60% of all personal wealth and control £400 million per week in expenditures than men. McKinsey reported that a top team that reflects different demographic groups will have a better understanding of their market behavior. By 2025, 65% of the global workforce will be made up of Gen Z, Alison and Simon, and millennials who want their workforce to be fostering innovative thinking, develop their skills, and be inclusive. Now, this is the supply chain market version of the we want our companies to be more like the country we work in. But that is a very compelling issue around supply chain and market. If anybody's got any thoughts around that, please, because I think this goes so strongly to the recruitment issue as well. To repeat that Marianne Wright Edelman phrase, you can't be what you can't see. How can we possibly expect to attract young customers and young workforce if our companies don't look like them, ascribe to the same values that they have, and so on and so forth. That's why this is, I think, such an absolutely riveting topic and so vital. We're going through this incredible period of change and upheaval that we've already had in the last year and a half. I always believe that there's nothing quite like a crisis to offer opportunities for change and reform. Charlotte, a very good evening to you.
Hello, hi Nick. I think it's a really interesting point, and all the sort of job advert side of things completely agree with. I think as well though, how explicit are manufacturers being in the sense that we want women, we want people from different backgrounds to join, because I think maybe there's a lot of intention and talk around it, but actually how much of that are we really advertising and being, because as a woman, sometimes I think, going back to the point about maybe I'm not completely hitting all of the boxes or ticking all of the boxes, but also if there's something inside of me that thinks I'm not quite wanted in this space, then I'm even less likely to try and go for it. So I think it's really a case of being really bold about the messaging that we're using as well. And that could possibly help.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I forget where I saw it, and I don't know whether it was on a social media comment about this or not, but it was a really fascinating one, because I wonder how much the male-dominated upper echelons of businesses actually really do want to change, because when there's diversity and inclusion training, unconscious bias training, that sort of thing. This comment said what you get is a lot of men who know what it's all about, but you don't get any more or different employees out of it. You just get some men who can tick a box to say they've taken a course. And I think there's potentially, I'm not leveling this as an accusation, but potentially among some companies, there's the same attitude to EDI as there was to CSR and, oh God, what's the new one? ESG. Sorry, all these three-letter acronyms are quite difficult to grab onto. But yeah, I suspect there's it's about self-interest in the end. Steve, were you applauding? Do you have the yellow hand up, or did you want was that a blue hand you wanted to put up, or are you just putting your thumbs up? Okay, all right. You want to contribute?
Yeah, I've only got a thumbs up or a clap. I haven't got the other one.
Okay, Steve.
I've just got to use what I've got, It's
Exactly
my
so. Exactly so. I mean, you need to get Zoom,
Steve.
Zoom 0.1 first. Go for it.
I suppose my point is that the expectations on manufacturing have come on a huge step forward. In other words, the people we need in manufacturing, we haven't always had. And now we're actually, I think, involved in a talent war with so many other industries that we actually have to make it appealing to manufacturing, to anybody, whatever the culture of the company is. Some people are happy to work for military companies, but whatever, you've got to have methodologies that really go into like the level of detail with people that really make the people tick. And I think when you're involved in a talent war like we are at the moment, you're in a talent war with the NHS, with accountancy. We have to be able to say, we're going to attract people for what they bring and what they can do. And we need to be able to do that, irrespective of gender, sexual orientation, or anything. We need to be able to do that just to get the amount of raw talent through the door in the first place. I think it's ceased to become a nice to have. I think it's closer to being an existential requirement. There is only so much talent around, and you have to make sure you attract it. So I think it needs to move from being something that sounds a bit woke. We need to start understanding that this level of diversity is what helps you to go into a board meeting and have one person saying sack them all and one person say them do this, and that internal friction helps you get a good solution more of the time. So I think it's become this recruiting and using diversity has become an existential requirement. We have to get good at it. We have to get good at really understanding what people are bringing and making sure we tell them that.
Yeah, the talent war is actually quite brutal. I remember being shown around Factory 50 up at the University of Sheffield AMRC in Rotherham by a delightful young, I think he was French or Italian engineer, spoke excellent English and was absolutely in love with all the fantastic gizmos they got up there. And I asked him about his background. He said, well, Goldman Sachs came after me and offered me the world. But I took this job because I love engineering. Well, okay, you can love engineering up to a point where all of a sudden the Goldman Sachs money bags start to appeal a great deal more. And I think that's what's happening to a great deal of our talent. And there was also another stat I saw which said that increasing numbers of young women are going into STEM subjects at A level and beyond. And that number is going up, and that's very, very positive. But that's not translating into more of them coming into the workforce. So I'll stop there. Sorry, Steve, go on.
People, I mean, STEM can take you into accountancy, it can take you into finance. Basically, a lot of the people, when there's a lot of derivative work in the financial industry, they took almost a whole generations of theoretical physicists because they're good at modeling, they're good at mathematics. So you've got the choice between going into a nice manufacturing company and maybe in 10, 20 years, say 20 years, being able to say up to 70K, or you can go to work in the city and retire at 45. And I just don't think we have to compete, and that's the sort of extremes we're competing with. So the only way we will compete is if we really start to offer something and bring people's talents out, and that will require a more proactive approach to viewing everybody with talent. That's me.
Thanks, Steve. Simon, good evening.
Good evening. Just a very brief question, really. If I actively want to recruit women into my organization, what are the magic words? Because I know what the magic words are to put me right in front of a potential legally damaging position. The things I'm not allowed to say, the things I'm not allowed to ask. But what are the magic words in advertising a position to make it very clear to the women who are looking at it that they're actually my target? Because I'm not allowed to say only women need apply.
Anybody want to pick up on that? Beverly, good evening.
Good evening. Well, I don't know whether I'll get this right, but one of the things I do think that certainly I believe surveys seem to indicate is that women are quite loyal, looking to the future. And so, a company that indicated that perhaps I ought to speak personally, maybe that's the only ground I can speak on here, but, that indicated there was a long-term future, that if you put in the effort, that it will be rewarded, that there is a route ahead, and that there is some consideration during the periods when you might be building a family or having a family and so forth, that kind of a caring culture where there's a relationship. It's not all about of course it's about performance, but it's about more than performance, the relationship that sits alongside the performance that I think so many of us in our working lives try to give. I think that would certainly speak to me beyond just a purely so-called professional relationship, that I was part of a team that valued me and that I was contributing to the growth in that place in a way that was valued. And that is the language that I do not see in so much of it's become so professional, so cold, so overwhelmingly hostile, that you wonder why on earth you would want to be part of this environment, and then combine that with short-termism that comes with any city funding, it becomes impossible, frankly. Thank you.
Thanks, Beverly. You hit on something there when you're talking about families. So the whole issue of childcare at a national level, I'm wondering if a company, obviously one that can afford it, that makes mention of childcare, because that applies to both parents. It's not just a women's issue, but it's a family issue, and parents sharing childcare is a very, very draining fact of life for many young people in work. Can I share my screen again? This, I thought, from the report was very telling. Read that in red there, where it talks about Iceland. Iceland is one of the OECD economies with the highest proportion of GDP spent on childcare. And look at that, 41.9% of senior roles and 46% of the board members. I mean, I think that's very, very, very telling, I have to say. Charlotte.
Hi, yeah. So it actually went back to what we were talking about before, actually, about kind of how to attract people and well, maybe actually just what Beverly was talking about there, to add on to some of that as well. What would really have attracted me, for example, would be, show me that you're going to give me the interesting work, because the amount of times that I was sidelined or thrown into project management positions or admin positions where I should have been the SME, for example, definitely deterred me from working in places for longer than I did, for example, and other things such as that. So I think the promise of interesting work, we won't sideline you, you'll get the opportunities too, is one of those things. I think the other side of sort of the positioning side of things as a whole, in terms of sort of how do we sort of start winning some of that talent and bringing it into manufacturing, is in a way, how do you make it cool, right? Because manufacturing has some of the most phenomenal use cases for new technology, and everything that's going on is amazing. But do people really know that at an education level? And I really don't think so. I don't think the teachers know it. I don't think the parents know it. And I think that's why people end up going into sort of Goldman, for example, because you think it's the exciting route as well as that pay package, right? But the exciting route as opposed to manufacturing. Just some thoughts.
Thanks, Charlotte. Ram, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. We're talking diversity today. Thank you, Nick. I'm coming at diversity from the other end of the table of racial diversity, as you can see clearly. The point I'm trying to, I've got about 5 points I want to talk. If it becomes too much of a monologue, Nick, stop me and I will shut up and I won't hold it against you. Firstly, diversity goes more than being skin deep, because, for example, I'm brown. And this is an experience we had when we went to a pub to have some lunch, and my wife said, "What's on the vegetarian menu?" And the response from the other side comes and says, "Oh, everything is halal." The point is, not every brown person needs halal. And then we had to explain that, look, we're not Muslims, we are Hindus. We all look brown, but not all brown people need halal. There are Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Christians, Hindus, Muslims who all look brown. So firstly, we don't have enough diversity training to tell people that just because you see a brown person, don't assume they are one religion or one category or one sect of people. Secondly, let's say we have a chamber of commerce, we have an enterprise partnership, and we have, let's say, a Make UK type organization. Secondly, let's assume that on the board of one of these organizations, there is me, there is Nick, there is Laura, there is Neeraj, and there is Alison. 5 different people. We are a diverse group, right? Now, imagine the same 5 of us sitting on the decision-making boards of all the other organizations. We are still a diverse group, but is there really diversity in terms of the ecosystem? It's not. It's the same 5 diverse people making decisions everywhere. That doesn't work, does it? Third thing is, there are so many organizations talking about supplier diversity. Oh, we want to increase supplier diversity by this much. We want to have BAME suppliers into the corporates. A lot of talk, but not a lot of action happening, and we don't see any change happening on the ground. That means diversity is simply being taken as a box-ticking exercise, which means we've checked the box, we've done the bare minimum, let's move on. And for me, the way I look at it as a minor ethnicity person, I do not want anybody to give me a job or a project or a purchase order because I am from a different ethnicity. But what I want for me in terms of genuine diversity is, I do not want to be excluded from consideration because I'm a minor ethnicity. There's a difference. Does it make sense? There's a difference between these two things. he's brown, let's give him the project, versus, oh, he's brown, let's exclude him, let's not exclude him. That's the conversation I want to have. And finally, as usual, one of my reading recommendations, which I mentioned to Nick earlier in the email, is this fantastic book called Rebel Ideas by this gentleman called Matthew Syed. Talks about diversity, diverse teams, and why diversity and where diversity works best. And if people are interested, I would definitely recommend this book. And it's a fantastic, I've only been through 40% of it, and I'm already bowled over to the point. I'm recommending this book to all of you and to the rest of the world that's watching me talk right now. So there you go. That's it. I'm done for now.
Oh, bless you, Ram. Listen, Matthew Syed, I mean, he used to be a sports writer. Now he's the lead opinion writer in the Sunday Times. And his columns are probably the most worthwhile reading of any in any newspaper. So Sunday Times, Matthew Syed, absolutely brilliant. Sarah, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. So a few points. I think when you put that survey up and the figure of 29%, I was actually expecting it to be lower, considerably lower, from my own experience of going in, particularly to the small manufacturers, and how rarely I do even see a woman in those meetings. The other points I would make in terms of my own experience in my career, and I've come from very much a corporate IT and telecoms background before I worked in the manufacturing sector, which I've done over the last sort of 4 years, was that I think I noticed when I first started through my secretarial route, I had to really work particularly hard to sort of put that extra effort in to sort of show that I wanted to sort of progress my career into a marketing role. So I had to put those considerable additional hours before I was sort of given that chance to operate. But I spent a lot of time talking to other women who were coming through a similar secretarial route, and what could I share with them so that they could sort of go through a similar route. The other point in terms of sort of giving women that opportunity when they come into companies to look at different ways of working, sort of flexible working, sort of childcare. In my career in BT, certainly that was one of my main considerations when I took the role, was what was going to happen when I had a family. And I think the whole flexible working culture within BT certainly was key, not only in terms of me making my career there, but a lot of other women. So I think for manufacturing, certainly having a wider mindset about flexible working, I think is something that they should take very seriously.
Yeah, that does raise the issue about who can afford it. And a lot of manufacturers at the very smaller end, as you mentioned, Sarah, they'd be in difficulty if they had that. But that's perhaps they shouldn't be in business if they haven't got themselves into a position where they can make things work through technology or whatever. But I also question, you make a very good point about the fact that hardly any of the people you see in very small manufacturers are women. That again suggests that there is that of that 29%, the bulk of those are in the medium to large size companies. Barry, a manufacturer, SME, what's your reaction on hearing a lot of this, and what goes on at Playdale?
Well, you'll be pleased to know that my board's 50% female, but hopefully people will be pleased to know that it is absolutely 50% female, nothing to do with it being around a diverse board. It was who was best for the job, and that's how we employ. And I think it all goes back to, I know we often discuss it on here, it's just skills of leadership. It's training, it's accidental managers, we're never, and I think we're kidding ourselves if we're going to remove bias. Now, be that conscious or unconscious bias, until people apply for a job and it's just, in dot matrix format, because accents, size, shape, ethnicity, it'll all creep in with unconscious bias as well. You make up your mind, don't you, in 5 seconds when someone walks through the door, what that person is or what they're about, applying for a job or not. So how do you remove that? That takes a lot, and you've got to train skills to be able to overcome those biases, to look for certain skills and attributes. I believe. So there's something in there. But going back to Simon's point about what you can and can't say, you can say anything you want in a job advert. You know, so I've helped someone put together a board role recently with a very well-known recruitment company, high-level C-suite guys. And this is what it says. So I'll read it out verbatim. So it says about you. You will be a current or recent senior manager or have board experience. We value and promote diversity and are committed to equality of opportunity for all. Appointments will be made on merit. We believe the best boards are those that are balanced and reflect the communities they serve. The current board has limited representation from minority groups. We particularly welcome applications from people from Black and minority ethnic communities or from disabled applicants who can make a real contribution to this organisation, who can contribute to shaping our strategic direction. And then it goes on to say a few more skills. But it's just to ask, you know, let's not try to wrap it up into something that isn't. If that's what we're looking for, to improve our organisation to go to a higher performance, and all the statistics prove more diverse you are, higher performing you will be, well, we'll write that. But if it shouldn't stop anyone applying, and maybe just encouraging others to apply. But I'd like to think the best person gets the job. It doesn't have to be a disabled Black lady.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I just want to actually just come back to something that Ram said, talking about supply chain and ethnic minority suppliers. I was chatting with Dennis Ford, who's EMEA internal procurement, I beg your pardon, for Cummins. Giant company, as you will know, a massive global company, American, but he does EMEA internal procurement. And he was telling me this is exactly what they do, but they follow through with it. It is actually part of their commitment. And it's not just box ticking. I mean, yeah, it does happen. And actually, Dennis is going to come on here one of these days and talk to us about it, because it was a really interesting conversation I had with him. Barry, thank you for that, mate. Laura, you've got your hand up.
Just coming back to the what Charlotte was saying and about the STEM projects and stuff at school. I think we often sort of group engineering and manufacturing together. And I think they're quite different skill sets. So in terms of my business, where we're sort of hands-on making stuff, obviously the engineering team have an engineering background, but a lot of the guys that I have doing the manufacturing, they're street smart. A lot of them are dyslexic. They don't necessarily have those STEM skills sort of, and would have done well in an academic environment. But where we've brought them into the business and they're doing well running and programming machines and can get their head around how to build things efficiently, it's a slightly different skill set. So I wonder whether we are missing a big chunk of people sort of school level age that think differently, that maybe we ought to be trying to attract into our businesses and not putting off, whether it would be putting them off, sort of implying that they need to be good at science and maths and STEM subjects, whether that is a help or a hindrance. But just a thought.
Yeah, we had a fantastic discussion a few weeks ago with Bill Morris in Colorado, who Alison introduced us to. He runs an electronics recycling company and only recruits autistic people, pardon me, and some physically disabled people. And he says he's got the most loyal, efficient, and reliable workforce you could possibly imagine. There are whole heaps of people out there who we somehow automatically exclude from consideration as potential workers, who could be dynamite, who could be much better than those that we regard as normal in our very narrow way of thinking. Niraj, hi.
Yeah, hi. Going back to what Laura initially mentioned, the instance about her, the employee who was reluctant to apply. So there is a study, statistical, information available that men will apply for a promotion or a job if they meet 60% of the criteria, while women will apply for a job if they meet 100% of the criteria. It's called a confidence gap. Now, how that can be mitigated is when people are advertising for the roles, there are things like the must-have requirements and then good-to-have requirements. Most of the time, the requirements are advertised mostly in the must-have section, and women are put off in applying for those. So it's what was recommended is to put quite a few of those in good-to-have requirements rather than in must-have. That will help more women to consider applying for those roles. So this is one of the, there are studies to back this up. I thought it'll be good to share. Think you are on
Nick,
mute.
I think you're on silent.
That's what a lot of people wish. Yeah, does anybody here write recruitment ads regularly, or have any experience of doing it? And does that, I thought that was a great point Neeraj made, that sort of must-have thing can be quite off-putting. I mean, I must admit, years ago, I remember looking at some job ads thinking, oh, yeah, I'm not bad at that, but you know, I'm not sure I can fulfill all of that. Oh, hang on a second. Should have put my phone on silent as well. So yeah, it's anybody got any experience of writing job ads? And is this something? No? Okay. Charlotte.
Yeah, no, just I thought, Laura, that was a really interesting point about the different sort of skill sets. And just not just at a school level, but also there are a lot of industries, for example, hospitality and retail, that also have a lot of people with those skill sets right now. And can we be going out not just to schools, but to different industries that are failing or, you know, suffering at this point, and taking talent from there and showing people from other areas as well is a different way of sort of bringing people across. It's something that we start to work on in a company that I was at previously. And it was having quite good success, actually. So just some thoughts about sort of that, a little bit different.
Thanks. Barry, have you still got your hand up, or was it due to come down? Okay. Alison, did you put your finger up as opposed to, yes? Okay.
I couldn't get to the reaction thing in time. Yeah, I write ads pretty regularly and job ads pretty regularly. And I was on a session last week with an aerospace manufacturer in Colorado out here in the US. And he spoke about having a hard time finding people and how to attract the right person, no matter, you know, where they came from, what they looked like. And he really kind of gave everybody a different perspective on the job ad itself. He said he thinks that we think too hard about it and we just need to simplify it. So I'm just going to read you 2 sentences from he sent me an example. He said, his ad says, "A growing company is seeking an enthusiastic person to join the team. If you're a detailed individual with quality workmanship, this is the shop for you. We're a fast-paced production aerospace shop looking for someone who wants to make exciting parts, and we will provide all the training necessary to be successful in this field." I mean, something like that. Granted, I think if I were really nitpicking here, I'd be careful with the word workmanship. I mean, if you really wanted to be, you know, nitpicky, you could say the word man was in there and all that, but whatever. But you play around with that. But to me, that is very like, wow, that speaks to a culture of, oh, well, even if I'm not fitting 100% of what's next, I might give this a shot.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Neeraj, is your hand still up, or?
Yeah. So you asked about the job adverts, Nick. I have hired a number of positions over the years, and I will be honest, I never applied that kind of a thought, which I now realize should have happened. Because what used to happen is that I'm giving a technical requirement to the HR and asking them to draft a JD and advertise the role. And it obviously, it lacks all that sensitivity, all those thoughts to diversity and inclusion, which should have been there in place at that time. But I think it was all a very standard monotonous exercise all these years. But things are changing, so we come across a lot of these very interesting ads that appeal to all sections of people, whether it is gender, race. So I think more and more people are becoming aware, including myself, and I think it's a good change.
Is your hand still up, Ram?
No, I want to say something now.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Right. So talking about diversity, right? We've spoken about gender diversity, we've spoken about racial diversity, we've spoken about a bit of skill diversity, we've not yet considered the fact that age diversity is a big thing as well. On the one hand, we have all these millennials with, I don't know, Instagram and Snapchat, and I don't know what else is going to come in the next 2 minutes, coming up and doing all these wonderful things. And then on the other end, we have Nick and Steve and all my close friends who are so the point is, we have such a diverse workforce, a big spectrum of workforce. On the one hand, you have these young people whom you want to nurture and grow to the next level, but on the other hand, you also have the people who, okay, I'm going to talk about my dad. Fantastic career in his life, did a lot of things in steel ministry and all that, but he cannot handle a smartphone. He hates the idea of using WhatsApp. So technology adopters on the one side and technology repulsors on the other side. So how do you balance the way you combine the requirements of the, let's say, the older generation with the way the technology is growing and the way the younger people want to do things? That's another challenge we're all going to have with diversity. Has anybody given any thought to that?
I think so. Yeah, actually, I think that I'll read a stat in a second. I just wonder actually whether the alleged broad-minded, high-minded Gen Z millennials, or late millennials, are going to stay as high-minded and broad-minded and etc. when the bills come in and when they've got to start paying the mortgage, and whether all of a sudden things might get a little squeakier. So I'm not certain that utopia lies right around the corner, but hey, it's worth a shot. Simon, is it a quick point you're going to make? Because I just want to.
Yeah, very, very quick point. Two things. I've actually got to leave in a minute, but exactly to what Ram was just saying. Two things. Firstly, a good friend of mine over here in DC has just spent 8 years forming a very, very, very successful company, which she founded when she was 67 years old. Secondly, Forbes magazine in the US is about to publish its 50 most significant over 50-year-old women in business in America, which is the first time that's ever been done. And I think it's an indication of exactly what we're talking about, which is that 85 is the new 65. But with that, I'm afraid I have to go. Fabulous conversation. Thank you very much indeed. And I'll hope to see everybody next week.
Yes, Simon. Okay, what I was going to say, given the last few minutes, is obviously we've talked about so many issues, but have we talked about what will make manufacturers change? And I've written 2 words: self-interest. I mean, it has to be self-interest, because that's all that ever makes people change, really, certainly at this corporate level. Profitability, 25% to 30%, 25 to 36% more likely to outperform their competitors on profitability. This is companies that embrace a broad diversity EDI policy. Innovation and decision-making, up to 30% greater ability of spotting and reducing business risks. That is if you've got more women in positions of significant control. Employee engagement, when leaders are perceived by their teams as being inclusive, 84% report feeling more motivated, 81% indicate it has a positive impact on their productivity. I mean, put like that, why isn't everybody pursuing these EDI policies, diversity and inclusion policies? It just seems crackers. But of course, it's so easy to say all this, but so much harder to initiate change. And I don't know if anybody's got any quick ideas in the 5 minutes we've got left. I mean, Johnny Williamson in a LinkedIn note to me earlier was talking about, where's the unifying voice? We've got to get the voice. Well, we've talked about that before. And in many ways, what we do at Manufacturing TV, we're hoping to try to unify some kind of voice. It's going to take time to build it, of course. But in terms of getting the message out to companies, what's the best way of getting it out there? Anybody got any thoughts? Somebody must. What would impress you if you saw a message?
Hi, Nick. Yeah, I think the issue about it is people don't believe, even when you put the statistics in front of them, they're not believing what they're seeing. And I think to a certain extent they have to experience it or see someone who has experienced it. So I think we have to grow from good examples. Barry will be a good example with his team, selected on merit, and but delivering the goods. And I think that's the issue, is unless they see and feel it themselves, a lot of people just dismiss it as more statistics.
Yeah, that's very fair. Alison, great point. Can't be what you can't see. It's there again. I mean, it applies in exactly the same way as we've been describing, talking to young people and so on and so forth. It's actually the same with manufacturers, owners and boards and all that. They've got to be able to see it.
Yeah, and it's tough too, because as manufacturers, we expect to do something and see a result, and this kind of thing's not going to be overnight. And it's kind of tough for some of us to come to grips with the fact that, wait a minute, I can't set a timeline and run a machine and have the magic come after. So I think there's a little bit to that too. Not to say we need to sit back and wait, but we need to stay the course. That's what the challenge is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hope conversations like this make such a huge amount of difference. But again, it's about bottling it. It's about getting that message across. What would impress anybody, Neil? I mean, what would impress you working in manufacturing? What kind of message would you listen to?
Well, it's not so much what message I listen to. I think it's the message that is out there. I mean, I've worked in a few SMEs. And again in manufacturing, and it's changing the attitude. That's especially on the large scales, your JCBs, your Siemens, all the large sort of manufacturers. They've got all this in place that it's in there. But your SME, we've always done it this way. We're always going to do it this way, and it's mostly male dominated. And unless there are, there are a lot of families as well. So unless there are female family members who are coming in to take over the business, and then sort of getting more people in, it's still a very male dominated, and it is that mindset. And I think it's that same mindset that drives the adverts. You've got to have a degree. You've got to have this experience. You've got to have that. And I think, again, back to the men will go for jobs. I went for a job where it said you must have sales experience. I ain't got any, not at all. But I applied for it, and because I pestered them, can I get another interview? How have I done? They gave me an interview, and the first thing that the interview manager said is he literally 2 minutes just looking through my CV, just looking through it, looking at me, looking down, looking at me. And I thought, here we go. His first question was, I've asked for sales experience. You've got none. Why should I employ you? And it's just like, oh, that's a good one. So I said, well, if I can't sell myself to you in this interview, then I'm not the right person. If I can, does it matter if I've got an experience? That got me the job, and off I went. But it's, I thought I haven't got any sales experience, but I'm still going to apply for it. And I, that is definitely a man's sort of state of mind. I thought, I've got 1 out of the 10 things that I want, so I'll apply to it. But I think, you know, sort of, you know, these days, obviously now, you know, with working from home and people talk about 4-day weeks, you know, sort of working split days. You can start at 6, finish at 2, or take a break in lunch. I think all this sort of stuff is helping change things. But is it going to happen in manufacturing? Because manufacturing, you've got the people making stuff. You can't have a chap making something, starting at 9 o'clock, knocking off at 11, then coming back at 3 o'clock, starting the machine up and working till 7. It doesn't work like that. So I think manufacturing's a different sort of thing. Yes, in services you can do that and other things, but manufacturing's a completely different ball game.
You can't even have a girl doing that either, Neil. Fatu, sorry, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Yes. What I wanted to say in terms of how you can convince board members, etc. I think the more they see women, Black women, or disabled women that are capable and that can deliver, this will change. I mean, I've been in several situations where I worked with executives and I arrive and there is no Black women, there is no Black people sometimes in SMEs or companies, and they see me and I'm here to help them and transform their team, transform their process. And I hope that it makes an impact for them to look at different type of candidates. You know, I think the more we will have this kind of contact and this kind of visibility, the less people will judge on physical characters, but more on abilities and what these persons are capable to deliver.
Yeah. Listen, it's 7:01, and as always, I like people to dash off. But Michael, I think you wanted to make a quick point, and then I think we'll call it a night. Monsieur Malbec is giving me the come on.
Thank you. I'll try and make it quick. I think we just need to be careful about these statistics that say that 25% of businesses are more successful. We have to make sure that we've got correlation and causation. You know, we can make a statistic that people that drive a car called Michael are more likely to crash than people called Nick and things like that. And there's no correlation and causation. So we have to be careful. But they're great as a headline, aren't they? I think the thing that comes out of this conversation for me is that Barry's talked about getting a board that have got the best people for the job. And I think that's really important. And Ram said, I don't want anybody to give me a job because of the color of my skin. I want them to give me a job because I'm the best person for the job. But then Beverly and Charlotte and also Alison talked about the language that we use in the job adverts. And Beverly was quite interesting and talked about if you phrase it in this way, it will sound more appealing to a certain type of people that you're trying to attract. And so I think there's an effort here that you need to have as somebody advertising a job to think about your language very, very carefully and to inspire and light the fire of those people that you want to attract that are from a diverse background, whether that be age, whether that be race, whether that be sex, whether that be whatever. And in that way, you can then get a great cohort of people you can interview and get the best people for the job. And that should ultimately end up with the ethnicity and sexual balance and everything that you want, provided people apply.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, you could say you've got the best people for the job, and forgive me, Barry, is actually I think he's gone. You could say you've got the best people for the job, but you don't necessarily actually know that. It depends how wide the net was and what you define as being the best. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you for joining us. That link I sent you works every time. So do come back and join us again. Same goes for Charlotte. Lovely to see you. Fatu, lovely to see you. Anybody else I missed out who's new? And Neil, welcome back from a marathon of DIY. Robin Williams, I'm sorry we didn't get to talk employment law this evening. Another time, perhaps. I saw her wondering about the wording of Barry's advert. So I think you've got to be very careful legal wise as well. Listen, bless you all. Thank you very much. Sorry I've kept you 4 minutes over time. I'm racing out of here. Take care. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye.